goodness.
Well, we're good to go.
Oh, are we live?
Yes, sir, we're live. All
We're live. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to
Third Vortex.
welcome back to Third Eye Vortex. Is this our third?
Yeah, I believe it's our third.
This is our third podcast. So, happy anniversary.
Yep. Right here in Wrightwood. I think that's where we're at. Mountain High. One of those.
All right.
We got a beautiful burn scenery.
Uh,
Beautiful burn scenery to talk about manufacturing consent,
whew.
which is honestly super fucking dense.
Yeah, I would say this probably took us longer to read because of that.
Yeah. And it's not that it wasn't interesting. I think it's super interesting, but it's hard to read along to something where you're seeing where we live in a country that basically fucking destroys other people's lives.
Yeah, it's pretty horrific. It goes into depth of multiple atrocities
Yeah.
committed by and then perpetuated by the United States.
Yeah. And then to have our media portray us as the innocent and the savior.
Right. It's almost slander, bro. It's
Yeah.
pretty close to slander.
Yeah.
But
I think it goes back to that thing where they talk about how the winners write the history books.
right.
And the United States has been winners. I mean, not really winners. I mean, in the case of Vietnam, we got our ass kicked, but we've dominated so many other countries and sold ourselves as the hero.
Right. One, I think it's interesting because we, especially here in the West, we play this game of, I mean, it is a competition, you know, who is best. That's why in America we say it all the time. Oh, we're the best, we're the best. It's not necessarily that we believe it in any way, shape, or form, but it is definitely part of the competition and of the conversation. But I think one of the interesting things that this book pointed out was the fact that we're not even sure if we belonged there in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? Like, should we have been in Vietnam?
Absolutely not.
No,
in Central America. I mean, we're still in Central America.
Right. You know, well, and those questions come up, and once they're answered in a more cohesive way, it seems to point towards the fact that, hey, maybe there are aspects of our democracy that are maybe slightly embarrassing to us, you know?
Yeah.
Even if they come to light, in a later time. I mean, again, the Vietnam War happened in the 70s. You know, the atrocities in Latin America extended from the 50s all the way
to now.
Right. And Vietnam from the 60s even,
Yeah.
and well into the 70s, you know?
I think technically the
50s as well.
Yeah,
and so you start to get this, like, pattern of, you know, I don't want to say just wrong things done, but maybe we've allowed here in the United States for elites too much voice in government or in positions of power, and that's interesting to say because maybe even social media is one of those places, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, because right now one of the big things that's going on is a debate over free speech. Is free speech the freedom to all social medias? Because that is where most publics,
Trump had a Twitter account.
Right.
So,
well, and Parler is an entire app where, you know, regardless of who follows it, it's an app. It's a social media app, and it was completely taken off of
any app
yeah,
store,
it was taken off of the Play Store, and it was taken off of...
Because they said they were promoting the charge on Capitol Hill.
Right. And so it's interesting because I'm not sure if it is, you know, right or wrong to maybe take somebody off or not to take somebody off, because maybe it is right to take them off, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, it is at least evident that some of these things, right, like the media especially, can change perspectives. It can change, you know, the direction that a war continues to go or doesn't continue to go.
Propaganda.
Right.
Yeah. Which I think is crazy because in this book, I mean, it's written in the 80s.
Yeah.
And so you have to think technology is nowhere near where it is now, yet they're hitting it right on the fucking head where we're at right now.
Yeah.
When you turn on the news, it's the same shit where they're selling a idea of the United States rather than actual uh, journalistic ideas of what's actually going on, instead
Right.
of being like they're not being objective.
Mhm.
And so I think with this book, Noam Chomsky and Herman, Herman, they talk about the propaganda model and television and print media, which print media is not that big anymore, but now we have social media, and I think it's still relevant. It's still relevant to
Right.
where we have this idea that, and it's still, and I find it funny too, because this is the '80s, closer to the Cold War than we are now,
Yeah.
and yet communism is still sold as the demon in our times.
Right. The number one thing
Yeah,
to be afraid
I mean,
of.
I honestly, what I kept thinking about in this book was the situation with Venezuela,
Okay.
where Maduro's got ousted by a U.S. backed politician, Guaido,
Mhm.
and so, and the media is selling them as red communist, and they want to fucking shut them down.
Right.
And it didn't work, but it still haunts me that that they're still doing this shit. They're still fucking
Right.
inputting their foot into somebody else's fucking democracy.
Right. It's the same model being used and very slightly updated, if that whatsoever.
Yeah, and you turn on the news, and nobody's disagreeing. Everyone's saying that. Like, I honestly don't know. I don't know if Maduro's a good guy or a bad guy. I can't say for myself.
Right.
But I guarantee you half these people on the news don't know.
Well, one of the interesting things I think that they mention in the book is that very few times is the United States media aware of how a foreign citizen feels about maybe again even our presence in another country,
Yeah.
where we're like, oh, we're defending you from yourself. That's really hard for a foreign country to understand, you know?
Especially with the
Because
cultural differences.
and it's so I mean, if you want to understand it as an American, think about it this way. How would we feel if, Germany or Spain came into the United States and started bombing the South
Yeah.
because, oh, well, you guys have insurrectionists within your country,
Yeah, that's
and they
a perfect
just
example.
bombed, multiple areas. Like, we would not be okay with that,
Yeah.
regardless of whether they were painting the picture of, oh, we're saving you from yourself, because eventually, I'll tell you what, conservatives and liberals alike would only agree on the fact that maybe the foreign entity shouldn't be there in the first place.
Yeah.
Which is
Funny that when we're doing it, it's opposite though.
exactly.
I think what it comes down to is power, and
Yeah.
we as the United States have power to not let that happen to us. But you think of these other countries, especially Latin America. I mean, Latin America is so new, and they're new to democracy, and they're susceptible to the United States fucking dirty tactics.
Right. They're new to a system as well. I mean, they're
Yeah.
new to. Not only are they new to democratically elected leaders, because that could have even potentially been a thing from their history, right? That was
Yeah.
erased with colonialism, and the reason being was because they wanted to establish forms of government that were ineffective, especially moving towards the future, right?
Yeah.
Because using princes and lords and feudalism systems works for a certain time and to a certain extent, but like it's a very backwards moving direction if you're already 15th century and beyond,
Yeah.
so it's very strange for again some of the, I mean, Mexico, right, just for the example, right, and I don't even know what year they became independent from Spain, but they became independent from Spain to have an emperor, and then they independentized themselves from the emperor
Yeah.
for like independence for a short while, and then France tried to take their independence, and
Yeah,
then the
absolutely.
United States tried to take their independence, and so it starts to become it's a very roundabout kind of thing to be getting your independence,
Yeah.
and there's no like quick exit in that loop. You're really forced to go through all the years of your left and right wing going crazy fighting each other
Yeah.
because the elitists are supporting the right and the peasants are supporting the left.
Yeah.
Like it in plenty of places, it's you can watch it deteriorate and just know that it's not going to be a quick fix.
Yeah, and countries need to countries basically form together to defend themselves from nations like the U.S. and the U.K. and these
Right.
power nations that take over. I mean, you think of Africa. Africa is split up. Africa, what part of Africa is not owned by another country?
Right.
I don't fucking know. I feel like it's near none though.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And so I think of that. I think as countries that aren't powerhouses, they basically have to form. I think of gangs, bro. In neighborhoods where you
Yeah.
fucking, if let's say if you're Latino or black or anyone, you form with your people and you kind of defend yourself. And I think that's what countries do.
Yeah.
And the United States is this big fucking bully that comes around and it's like you're gonna fucking pay due.
Right.
And these countries are just defending themselves,
Right.
whether it's Vietnam, Cambodia. And I think that's what Noam Chomsky hits on the head, man. He just talks about how these countries just get fucking demolished by.
Well, another thing they mentioned is the fact that they exist there before the United States and, foreign intervention.
Yeah.
One of the parts of the book they mentioned the Viet Cong was in these areas of Vietnam for centuries.
Yeah.
Or decades
were
at the bare
indigenous.
minimum. Yeah, they were there way before the U.S. And then the U.S. showed up and they were like, oh, they're Viet Cong, we have to bomb them. And, an interesting part of it is, well, you don't have to bomb them. They've been living there and coexisting with the people for a very long time, and it just makes it a weird situation to stick your foot in it and say, I'm going to fix it,
I don't know if this is relevant, but I studied a lot of the indigenous of the Americas, and reading this book, it kind of brought to my attention that for some reason, not just the United States, I think these like power nations have an issue with indigenous populations. We don't like their way of being, and
Yeah.
they fuck it up completely. You think of the number of Native American women that get raped in relation to a white woman. It's so far it's lopsided. It's completely lopsided, and
Right.
and nobody's aware of that shit. And so I think of Vietnam, their indigenous population gets fucking ravaged by the United States.
Right.
Latin America's indigenous people get ravaged by their own country and other countries, and so it's just this constant modern versus pastime cultures. And I think, and it's something that's in our own cultures as well. I mean, you go to Mexico and you get caught an Indio, it's insulting.
Right.
And I feel like we need to come past that. We need to realize the beauty of our cultures.
Well, the abuse of women is well documented too in
Absolutely.
Southern America
Yeah,
and Central
absolutely.
America.
Even in Canada, the Inuit women and the First Nations, the number of people that are missing, murdered, raped, is so far. Like the percentage is completely lopsided to the point where it's like pinpointed.
Right. Well, it brings up one of the key concepts of the book, which is the idea of worthy and unworthy victims.
Yeah, which is
Interesting because,
yeah.
well, and here's the thing. Truth be told, we know whether we're worthy or unworthy victims.
yeah,
Right? Usually our parents will tell us when we're young. They'll be like, hey, you need to be careful for police officers because they don't care about you,
Yeah.
and they could very easily kill you because they carry guns,
yeah.
right?
You're not worthy, and you're not worthy for it to
Right.
get media attention.
And other people see it different ways. I've talked to plenty of my white friends that are like, nah, man, we're not afraid of the police because the police have never done anything threatening to us. Which is all fine and dandy. It just, worthy and unworthy, right? The people that stormed the Capitol just last week, they knew that they were worthy victims of not getting shot, even if they were storming a Capitol.
I mean, there's videos of the cops letting them in. I
Right.
mean, granted, there were some cops that were
Yeah.
doing their job, and that's
But they were
fucking great.
wearing military guard.
Yeah.
They
Some of
had
them brought
weapons.
Yeah.
They had zip ties as if they were gonna blow things up. It becomes a very blatantly obvious issue. Certain people are worthy victims, certain people are not.
Yeah.
And to this day, right, you and I have discussed this in the past, white supremacy is just something that exists.
Yeah.
I remember having a discussion with my friend about World War II, and he was like, dude, the United States did not want to get involved in World War II. And he's like, not because we found it appalling what was happening over there or because we didn't find it appalling. He was like, the reason we didn't get involved was because we didn't want to intervene in Germany's white supremacist march,
Yeah.
basically. Why? Because apparently so much of that same riled up idea or idealism is within our
Yeah.
country. It's in every rank of the country, as we're discovering.
Which is
The
one of the
people
largest reasons why we took a lot of the German generals, and they took.
and scientists, we said, hey, come over here, we'll totally pay for all of your scientific works, you know. And again, that's not a bad thing. We were able to take so much from those German scientists, right?
But at what cost? That's the only issue.
Yeah, it's very possible, that we just completely let Nazism directly into our country, that direction. But we don't know. But it's there, and we know it's there.
Yeah.
Like, I've never had to, pretend that I didn't know that there was racism, and that, like, some people would get shot over other people just based on the value of their skin color.
Yeah.
Right? I knew that at a young age, but now that it's older, a lot of people are starting to notice it for the first time, and it turns out that their skin color is the one that's not going to get harmed in that situation.
Yeah.
That's not ironic. That's how it works.
Yeah.
If something is a danger to you, then you'll probably keep an eye out for it. If it's not a danger to you, then you'll probably won't. You'll leave it in the back of your mind, So we can't get mad either at white people who are like, oh shit, I didn't know white supremacy was everywhere.
Yeah.
We need to get mad at the people that knew white supremacy was there and still were like, bro, you just kind of got to let it go. You got to overlook it, Like, you kind of got to just pretend it's not there. Because those people are the ones that want us to coexist with that.
Yeah.
Those are the people talking about, oh, we need to unite in this terrible time where white supremacists are... No, dude. This is not the time that we want to unite with people who are white supremacists, This is the time to purge, if anything, Like, try to find a way to clean these people out of your system. If not, you're going to continue to suffer the same things that you've been suffering, not just for the past 400 years of slavery, right? Or for the past, 1,000 years of European colonialism, but even, the past decade, or half century of people taking advantage of white supremacy and then pretending it doesn't exist. And then shaming us for bringing up the fact...
Telling us to get over it, pretty much.
Telling us that we're living in a different time. We're not being realistic about how we're being exploited and how we could be, recompensated. I think it's very ignorant for people to just ignore it, because they have for very long, and now it's so in their face, and there's people talking about, oh, it was Antifa. No, dude, you can't, because that's another thing. The book is just going over about, look, all these crazy right-wing fucking groups that are funded by elitists, they'll
That's the problem, is the funding.
They'll do all these terrorist fucking things, and then they'll just blame it on the left, and it's just so easy for, with a media giant to just blame it all on the left, especially when all of the fucking media corporations are owned by people or elitists far on the right, So to begin to blame Antifa, bro, it's just, it's so like, bro, that's just the oldest trick in the book, and so like, that was so obvious and painstakingly, like, wow, it's embarrassing that you guys are fucking blaming Antifa for Trump supporters that were trying to storm the Capitol. All of them, bro, weeks in advance were like, yeah, let's storm the Capitol, and now it was Antifa. Fuck off,
I think
bro.
the funding aspect is important, because he talks about, honestly, it's one of my favorite parts of the books. He talks about how 9 media conglomerates own every fucking thing.
Yeah.
General Electric, ABC, and like, so all these companies are owned by 9 media conglomerates, and entertainment is their number one issue. And that's what he talks about. He says news and journalism based off entertainment will sell sex, drugs, and violence to children.
Yeah.
And that's
TikTok.
That's what our social media, our internet, that's what everything is.
Yeah.
Instead of actual news-based shit. If you turn on the news, they talk about shit that's not really that fucking important.
Right.
Tell us about the Uyghurs in China. Tell us about fucking actual issues, and we fail to get that because they're selling entertainment. It made me, which is why I think entertainment is a good way to fight it. I was watching. Did you hear about One Night in Miami?
No.
Okay, it's a movie about Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, and Sam Cooke. About they were good friends and they were all fucking successful in entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think of Muhammad Ali, he used his skills for a political voice.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because entertainment is what our news is now.
Yeah.
And so people who are in entertainment need to use their position to fight.
Hmm.
I think of comedians. Comedians happen to talk about the most political shit.
Yeah. Well,
because it's a ground for talking about it. You're not going to hear about this shit anywhere else. Some of the shit that I learned from Joe Rogan or from fucking Dave Chappelle, you don't hear anywhere else.
right.
I have to go to YouTube for my news because our TV is so based on selling fucking products and this
Right.
whole idea of
Right.
perfectionism where we're not.
Right. Capitalism in a sense.
100% fucking capitalism.
Yeah. It's interesting that humanity has found a way, though, to, trick it in its own way, right? Like, comedians for a while now have been talking shit on,
Oh, absolutely.
just the frame of society, the idea that really rich people are behind the scenes, like tugging at all of us and all of our, cultural and everything. And so it's interesting that people in their own right and in their own art find a way to protest their own way.
Yeah.
Because Chappelle does it his way, right? But, there's another black comedian that came before him.
Before Dave Chappelle?
Was it Richard Simmons, I think?
Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor would
Yeah.
talk so much shit.
Yeah.
And it was just fucking beautiful, and you would listen to that.
Yeah.
You would listen
Richard
to
Pryor's
him.
amazing.
Yeah, you would listen to him be right, and it would be hilarious. And again, I think Dave Chappelle's started to do that too.
And Bill Hicks and there's a lot of George Carlin.
Right. And even even music artists who have used their music.
Absolutely, 100%.
Right.
I think of LeBron James, bro. Like,
yeah.
A lot of people told him to shut up and play ball, and that's not the fucking point. His fucking him being good at basketball is so much bigger than that.
Right. Well, the people who told him to shut up and dribble were like
Fucking
right wing,
elitists, yeah.
right wing elitists.
And I bet you anything, a lot of those people are invested in entertainment, and they know that entertainment is the way to get to our heads nowadays.
Yeah.
That's
why if you want to get at like the commoners' heads, it's not a good thing for greatness to be in the picture.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because they don't want people to be great. They want people to work their 9 to 5 and come home and watch Netflix and spend, 12
mind numb.
Right, and spend $12 on a dinner and then, buy a diamond ring and move into a house and have 2.4 kids.
Yeah.
If you can convince people to do that, as a government, you'll be pretty successful.
Yeah. I mean, it's the classic sheep fucking mentality. Honestly, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah,
a
lot of people are really happy with it, bro. And really, if happiness is the ultimate goal, then there's nothing fucking more to it.
I guess for me, like, I've talked about my idea of success.
Right. We're all allowed to have our own version of it. That's why some people can totally pursue happiness, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And some people can pursue other things, and it's also fine. You can't pursue killing people.
Yeah.
That's usually not okay anymore.
Yeah.
That's an outdated form.
I mean, you would think so, but I mean, there's still cases where it's so fucking questionable. I mean, I think of the bombings in the Middle East, bro. Like, and it's like normal. Like, Obama was probably a better president that we've had, and he bombed the fuck out of the Middle East. Yeah. And so it's just bizarre that it's normal. It's not, and it's this whole fucking idea of selling yourself as a hero, bro. Again, either whether it's communism or terrorism, it's just a label that we put on fucking people to fucking take their shit. And have you noticed that the places we go, it's always some type of natural resource that we fucking take. Have you ever heard of Salvador Allende in Chile?
No.
Okay,
well, this name does sound really familiar.
So I took a Latin American Revolution class, and Salvador Allende was the first Marxist elected president in Latin America, I believe, if not Chile.
Okay. You made me watch a video on Chile, and it might have been
I think
around
it was about him.
Yeah. Okay, continue.
And so I was so fucking tripping out about that shit because this guy got elected democratically.
Right.
The working people were fucking for this guy.
Yeah.
And he got overthrown in a coup.
Yeah.
And it's just this common fucking thing where
That happens all the time in Latin America.
Yeah, and
where a United States funded
Exactly.
coup ends up being the one thing
and
to.
then all you gotta do is call him a communist. And I
Yeah,
hate it because
bro.
communist doesn't necessarily mean authoritative or totalitarian. Communist is an idea. You can disagree with, or you can agree with it. It doesn't fucking matter.
Right.
The point is
Well,
that every fucking leadership has its own thing. So you can be a capitalist and still have an authoritarian dictatorship.
yeah.
And so that's not the fucking issue. And we have this.
Isn't that what China is? Pretty much.
I think so. I don't know.
Because they
I
do
don't
have a
know
free
too well.
market to a certain
Yeah, they
extent.
have free
but-
markets.
right. Continue.
But yeah, so I think we, as a nation, not me, we assign these terms that are like a free token to violence.
Right. Communism being
Yeah.
one of them.
I mean, when the Black Panthers and the Brown Berets teamed up, they got labeled terrorists,
Terrorists being another. Yeah.
domestic terrorists, and I don't know. It's just this common thing, and we just fucking assign it to them, destroy it, and fucking wait for the next uprising. That's exactly what it is. It's this
Right.
common fucking circle.
Well, that thing that you're describing too, I mean, it's a common practice in Latin America where, again, Latin America will have a democratic process,
Yeah.
and coincidentally, they'll vote for the left-leaning person
The pink
because they're all they're all poor people
Yeah.
for the most part, you know, like a lot of these countries, like they were talking about, Guatemala has a large indigenous population
The biggest,
They're
I think, the most percentage
of
yeah.
any Latin American country.
Yeah.
It's very possible, bro. They're basically in Mayan territory.
Yeah.
They're all Mayans. They're, you know, now they're Guatemalans, but they're just basically Mayans
Yeah.
who are there.
I mean, there was other communities too, but
Right,
mine was like
right.
the
But so they're mostly indigenous,
Yeah,
right? And it's like all those indigenous people, for the most part, are just gonna work on farms, dude. They're not educated. They can't go get a job at the DMV,
Yeah.
right? They can't do that, you know. And so, what do? Well, they work with their hands because you can totally, you know, help somebody plant a crop and, you know, harvest it, because you can do that with your hands, and somebody can just help you understand, and then you can do it.
and a lot of them are content like with who they are, and I feel like
Yeah, they don't need to be superstars, bro.
feel
They
like
just
the-
want to eat and
Yeah,
feed their children.
exactly. And I
you
feel like
know?
the government sees that, and it
It's just-
irks them. It fucking irks them that these people aren't part of their fucking system, and so it's easier just to kill them off.
So, I remember hearing this one thing where they were mentioning that certain people on the left, it's not that they like the poor, it's just that they hate the rich.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like
And so-
suburban.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily always that it's like we're trying to help these people. Sometimes it's just, oh, well, we're better. You know, like we're better off, we could help them be better, but not at our cost,
Yeah.
you know? That's why we backed out of Vietnam. Because we realized, oh shit, we're not actually kicking ass like the military saying.
Yeah.
We're actually getting our ass kicked pretty hard. And it turns out that if we do want to win, it's going to cost so many more soldiers that it actually doesn't make sense.
And the thing about like the suburban people is they like you said, they want to fucking bring up, they don't necessarily like the poor people, but they just hate the rich people, right?
Yeah.
I was watching this show, American Gods, and they talk about, there's one scene where he goes, white people love to pat themselves on the back when they're not being shitty to us. You know, so like as soon as they get an opportunity to be like, well, I wasn't a dick to you, so I'm a good person.
Right.
And I think it's this common thing that we're seeing, and it's honestly I feel like it's a big section of the Democratic Party that it's exactly that, where they're not being dicks to us, so they're good people.
Right.
They voted for Biden, and they're not racist.
Right.
They fucking go to the Black Lives Matter protests, and they're doing
Just enough.
just enough, and they're fucking going way and beyond to check themselves.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's more than that. It's all fucked up.
Yeah, man. These areas, bro, that are completely poverty stricken, they need time more than anything. Right? Because they need resources, but it's not the kind of thing where in one presidency you'll be able to fix their problems.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing that like you plant a tree and you're not going to be able to harvest fruit from it for years. You know?
Honestly, they just need equal grounding too. I mean, if they just got provided the same opportunity as other people would be.
Well, that's yeah. Because here's the thing: is like with resources, like comes education, right? So your kids can go to school. If your kids can go to school, then your kids can get like usually a better job. Not always, but usually, especially in this time.
Yeah.
And if you can get a better job and you can save a little bit of money, which usually it just takes a little bit of like economic education to know that you shouldn't spend your money on dumb stuff when you're really poor. You know?
Yeah.
Doesn't take a whole lot. Most poor people know that they can't really spend money willy-nilly, you know? So it's not necessarily that you have to like teach them how to not spend their money. Usually it's just you need to find a way for them to be able to spend their money, and then before they like learn that they can spend it, you need to teach them that they could spend it on things that will bring them out of poverty.
Yeah. Well, I think that's partly due to again, social media and entertainment, because the thing about, like, again, you know that if you're poor, you know that you can't just spend your money everywhere.
Right.
But as soon as you get money, you
Want to spend it the way.
and you see these people on TV and they have nice shoes, good cars, and we want that. And so it's kind of like, it's almost like discipline more than anything. And I feel like and a lot of poor people do have discipline. I just think it's just we get like sold on this idea of like I've seen people who have fucking several pairs of nice shoes, but their kids aren't eating well. And so I think we need to do a better job of teaching our communities to like to have the money and save it up and use it for more productive things.
Yeah. To sort out their values too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause yeah, bro. I mean, I think about places that are like, I don't know, man. I think about like places that a roof over their head is almost too much to ask for.
Yeah.
You know, that
third world countries.
If that's a family, right? Let's say it's a family of like 3 kids, you know, and the wife and the dad. Those kids are gonna do a lot better if they have an education.
Yeah.
They're not going to get an education if they need to start working immediately after they can in order to provide for the family. You know?
Yeah.
And I feel like all of that ends up having, you know, its benefits and its cons and everything. But I don't know. I truly do believe that if we can just get resources into these areas and then just give them time, like, you can't really do much else. Yeah. Because they'll fix their own problems, bro. Poor people will fix their own problems if they have an opportunity to, you know?
And sometimes they find better solutions than anyone else ever will.
Yeah, man.
We were talking about food.
I think that social media nowadays is making this great leap towards, like, creating a more efficient, I don't want to say government, but a more hands-on approach to it. You remember when we were talking about the fighting, judging being not necessarily corrupt, but just...
Oh, like UFC judges and stuff? Yeah.
Right. It was easy to be critical of it because it's not necessarily super strong. It's not a strong system, you know?
Absolutely.
3 judges judge 2 guys fighting. One of them misses, you know, a couple of punches, and that's enough for one guy to lose the fight.
Swayed by crowd noise.
Right. That's a bad format, right? And then what Verdict did was they said, okay, well, we're going to let every single person in the world judge it who wants to, right? Who's watching the fight. And all those people can judge it, and then you get a much more... And it may also still be swayed based on,
Oh, you don't...
But it's less skewed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because now you have 400,000 people making the call instead of 3. And I hate to be the one to be like, oh yeah, it's definitely the crowd that's right. But to a certain extent, it does make sense when the whole crowd, right, the collective of what the crowd thinks is more powerful than even what the most experienced judges saw.
It would be cool to count that as one judge's scorecard. So like maybe if you had 4 judges, and then the one judge scorecard would be the verdict of everyone's poll.
I think over time too, I mean, like in football and soccer, we ended up putting film or camera, right?
Yeah.
We use it as a judge now, not all the time for every situation, but we do use it. We consider it because
Yeah.
we know it's there, and we know that we get the calls wrong sometimes. So, in my opinion, I think social media is starting to do a wonderful job of doing that to the government.
Yeah, we're shaping it.
And not just that, you see somebody be racist today on television,
Yeah.
you can call their office today,
Yeah.
right? And you can complain about it today. You can put it on social media, and hundreds of
Yeah.
thousands of people will complain about it today.
Are you familiar with Force the Vote?
I'm not, but I've heard about it.
So I watch YouTube media because I find it way more reliable than
Yeah.
TV media. But I watch
Right.
like Kyle Kalinske and stuff, and basically a comedian named Jimmy Dore came up with this plan for AOC and the Squad and all the progressive Congress people to pressure Nancy Pelosi to put a vote on Medicare for all, and basically they were threatening to not vote for her for Speaker of the House.
Wow.
And it's a fucking amazing plan, right?
Right.
But this guy's a comedian. You're not gonna fucking be able to communicate that to these Congress people. But he has a YouTube channel. He has enough followers. He tweeted it, and fucking it fucking caught fire. And
Right.
Justin Jackson, the running back for the Chargers, was the one who was able to connect with AOC, and basically had AOC respond to him.
Yeah.
And it just shows that social media is a format to communicate
Right.
on a base level with these senators, Congress people, fucking leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that goes with what you're saying, is we're just gonna use whatever we have at our
Disposal.
to communicate with people that you wouldn't usually be able to communicate.
Yeah.
If you have a good idea, you're crowdsourcing. Social media is crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
One person's gonna have a good idea, and you might never ever meet this motherfucker. But with Twitter, he can post his ideas, it can be shared, and it'll fucking catch wind.
Right.
And I think that's where social media is gonna play a large fucking role.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it's interesting. It's interesting to see how social media has evolved just in our short lifespan, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when I was 14, right, we were starting to get internet on our phones, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But,
I think, yeah.
even before
Yeah,
then. But what I'm saying is, like, we were finally understanding that was possible, and that was, like, very real, and it could be in a lot of people's hands. And now, like, why don't we just vote from apps?
Yeah.
Because everybody has an app. Everyone has a phone that can download an app. It's much more.
I think the only downside would be for the poorer communities that don't have access.
Right.
But I
So,
mean, yeah,
there
there's
was-
solutions.
There was a country recently where, I don't know if it was the prime minister, somebody said they were like, we need to get Wi-Fi to everybody.
That's a fucking excellent.
And he was basically saying, he was like, we're doing it now because it makes no sense for people to be like home on Zoom
Yeah.
and not have a computer or not have Wi-Fi. He's
And
like,
you know what that's
so we're
called?
gonna-
Socialism.
right. We
it's
don't
called-
like, we don't
yeah.
like the idea of it. Well, especially because as soon as you start saying socialism, like,
Yeah, people get fucking scared, man.
well, and communism creeps into everybody's mind. And here's the thing, I don't think that necessarily people are afraid of the idea of communism. I think the idea that they're afraid of is Stalin.
Yeah.
Stalin communism is what they're most because that's what.
But they associate that with every fucking form of socialism. I mean, Bernie
Right.
is a democratic
No,
socialist, which is
I agree completely. It's fun. It's difficult to explain to anybody, and it's even more difficult, I would say, for people to truly understand what you mean, because it's difficult to get past what everybody's heard about communism. It's difficult to get past what everybody's heard about, the left, right, or the radical left and the radical right, and it's not easy to get past everybody's bias.
Yeah.
Because we all are biased to
Yeah.
a certain extent, and it ends up being difficult to say, okay, maybe this aspect of the left side could work, because you'll immediately get flack from the right side, and the left side will just immediately start a fight with them over that,
It's
regardless
tribalism.
of whether anyone's right,
Yeah.
Well,
it's because you're part of that team.
right,
It's
yeah,
like those vote blue no matter who people. It's like
exactly,
you're not doing yourself any good, because the same thing with identity politics. It's like just because you're something, it doesn't mean that your ideals. I'll vote for you no matter your ideals. You have to
Right.
have the right ideals.
right,
And if you have political identity or identity politics or fucking or anything, whether you're part of a party or not. If you have the ideas that agree with me, then I'm gonna like you and support you.
Right. You know what else is interesting is I think that the internet's not made it like evident to us because we've all known this, right? But at the same time, we've always thought that our candidates were pretty one-dimensional in terms of they were either a liberal or a conservative, at least in the recent history.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm starting to see that now it's becoming very evident that Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton were all vastly different politicians of a same or similar political party or political aspirations even.
Which is why there's so many talks of a party split. I mean, even on the Republican side, you have the Trumpists, and then you have the more libertarian, economically sort. Yeah. So I think it's just everyone's has such an individualistic mind that it's hard to just group it into two fucking parties.
Yeah, and I think having the two parties has definitely like it's done its fair share of damage, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And we again like people have definitely sided with stuff that they didn't necessarily agree with, just because they were saying basically, "Ah, to hell with it."
Yeah.
You know, and that's not what we want in politics. We want people's opinions in politics to be very specifically drawn out. You know, we want people to be able to participate and be heard on as many levels as possible. I think that should be the goal, at least.
Yeah.
You know, to have as many people participate as efficiently possible. Because then you represent everybody's views and not necessarily in now, you know, 25% of the population's needs are met 100% and everyone else is, you know, just kind of fucked.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the goal. I think the goal really could be to have some kind of parliamentary system where you vote for a certain amount for a certain area, you know, or for your certain area, and your certain area nominates, you know, a certain type of elected official, and then that elected official goes and argues, you know, on your behalf.
Well, that's kind of what we have, right, with the representatives, but they don't fucking represent shit.
Right. Well, no, here's my problem is once they get to Washington, and then it's just immediately they're on the right or the left.
Yeah.
Because I think the way one of my friend's dads was explaining it to me was, in other countries, let's say there's like 4 or 5 political parties, right? If you are with the values of that political party, right, you vote for that political party, right?
Yeah.
And whatever percentage of the vote they get determines how many of their representatives get to be in Congress. And it'll usually, the way they line it up is they'll say, okay, if we could only have one person be in Congress, who would that be? And they put that guy at the top of the list. If we could only have 2 people in Congress, who would be the next guy? And then they just do that list down the line. So you get as many of your
rank choice.
Yeah, you get as many of your party's representatives in there as possible. And in my opinion, that sounds like the most useful. That way, all these Trump voters could get their own politicians in. And you know what? It's not that like I'm like, oh, they should definitely get their votes. They just, sure, they want their votes.
Yeah.
Fine, by all means.
That's the point of
they should
the
definitely
system.
Right. They should definitely be able to put all their votes behind one candidate or behind one party that sets up a couple of candidates. You know, and it would just be really funny to over time watch some of these political parties die out because little by little maybe they weren't doing the right things, or maybe their following just kept diminishing and diminishing and diminishing. For different reasons too, you know, it's not necessarily, but yeah, to have a 2-party system is just stupid.
Well,
it's just
I think
obvious that it doesn't work.
I think that the 2-party system is gonna stay because I mean the book talks about that the media strives on entertainment, and what's more entertaining than 1 versus 1?
Yeah.
And they sell the fuck out of it. I mean, you think of Fox and NBC on the 2 fucking complete end of the spectrums,
Right.
and they fucking just rag on each other.
Well, I mean,
And that's what sells. That's what people watch. How many
bro,
people watch
foreigners.
Fox this year?
That's what I'm saying is the amount of foreigners even that watch our election, because it's a Muhammad versus Ali thing.
Exactly.
It's just big guy versus a big guy
That's the only
punching
thing
each
keeping
other.
these news channels afloat. You know that, right? I mean, without this
Without
drama,
the elections.
without any of this drama, these news channels are starving to death. Cable is dying.
Well, yeah, and cable is gonna die.
Yeah, it's
Cable,
going to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
funny because these social medias, bro. It's like Fox still has a page, right? You know, like Fox News has an Instagram, and their Instagram has a shit ton of followers, and all their followers kind of agree with the shit that they're saying, right? It's nowhere near the amount of like all the other ones, right? But it doesn't change the fact that again, those people are there. That's why, in my opinion, man, just let them be represented.
Yeah. Well, and
Fuck yeah. And here's the thing,
that's
bro.
what the system should be.
If every single time that their representatives are up there, they're just saying stupid shit, that's okay.
Yeah.
Are they wasting everyone's time? Yes. Does it matter? Not really. Because honestly, bro, the other day when I was finding out that like they were arresting like congressmen because who participated in the riot, I was like, congressman, bro.
Yeah.
And that's not to say anything special about him or anything bad about him. It's just a congressman was stupid enough to storm a Capitol building and think that he wasn't gonna get arrested.
Well, that's why I like the saying that education doesn't necessarily mean intelligence, because that's exactly what that is.
God, I didn't even think he was educated though. That's the point I'm trying to make. Is
Who are
this
these
guy?
people?
This guy was just elected by the people around his area, and that's totally fine. But if you were actually on if you were on a national level competing, with AOC and other people about why this should or should not be a part of the bill, it's gonna be a lot easier to say, shut the fuck up and sit down while the adults talk, And it's not to say that all, right-wing or Republican people are stupid.
No,
It's just, bro.
I just disagree with them wholeheartedly.
Right. Well, and I disagree with a fucking congressman marching upon the fucking national capitol. That's just fucking retarded.
And speaking of that fucking Capitol thing, man, if it was black or brown,
people would have gotten shot. Yeah, bro. I mean, one woman lost her life because of a gunshot that the police did. That was one.
Yeah.
One person. And they stormed the Capitol. They threatened.
They had weapons.
Yeah, they had weapons. I'm telling you, bro, apparently they had to remove bombs from inside of the Capitol.
Yeah. And
bombs.
What really irked me was that these are the same exact people who were talking shit about the Black Lives Matter protests and that how they're destroying federal buildings. These people did the exact same fucking thing. If you're gonna hold true to your morals and standings, then you fucking at least there's some honor in you being a dickhead rather than you being a fucking hypocritical dickhead.
Yeah, but they don't care, bro.
They don't. That's the problem. That's the problem. And it's gonna continue. And that's the thing is we just have to fucking.
And I'm not comfortable with it either, bro.
I'm
like, I don't want to get run off the road by some hick who's just feeling big in his big truck. Like, that's just not a joyful life to be living.
Yeah.
But again, I would be so much happier if they were represented in Congress because they wouldn't be as mad.
Yeah.
I don't think, at least. And here's the thing: is we aren't represented in Congress either.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, we also just kind of we're like, we've never been represented in Congress. These idiots are like, oh man, my grandpappy used to be represented in Congress and now I'm not represented in Congress, so it's terrible.
Yeah. And I do think that like every fucking group should have the representation. It's just our system does not allow for it right now.
Well, and again, that's what here's the thing, bro. This side voted Trump as their representation, and he absolutely was their representation.
Yeah.
And again, we kind of laughed it off because we didn't necessarily feel like it was our representation.
Absolutely.
Right? But at the same time, that's how badly they need a representation. That the first fucking opportunity they got, they put Donald Trump in fucking office.
Yeah. And it was a good amount of people who voted for him, man. So I mean, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I really hate when people bring that up. That oh man, so many fucking people voted for him, and it's there's so many reasons, right?
Yeah.
Because a percentage of the population, and we know this.
Economics that they say.
Exactly, and some people vote strictly on, the stock market's up this year, that's enough for, and that's what I'm saying is to a certain extent, some of these percentages were gonna vote Republican no matter what.
Yeah.
I remember hearing this one fucking art teacher from my school voted for Donald Trump because religious reasons.
Oh no, that's a very common one.
And so I mean, I just kind of right, it's the abortion thing, and I just kind of laugh it off because I'm like, wow. Abortion is the deal breaker, but all the other shit isn't.
Yeah.
But I don't care. What I'm saying is that's how many people are willing to vote for, their guy, their, tribalistic dude, no matter what. That's why it would be so much better if the people who are only voting for Donald Trump because of an abortion to be voting for a very specific organization that was very anti-abortion.
Which they do.
Which they do, exactly. But, like, if it was like, okay, well, here's the white supremacists over here, and what we care about is, like, freedom of guns and freedom of, like, government, all that crap, right? You can put them under a specific category, and then you can have the people over here who are like, yeah, we're very just religious morals only, right?
Yeah.
No abortion, right? Right.
Then you can have your own representative instead of putting
and
it all in one
exactly,
party.
because now you have the white supremacist and the fucking abortion or like the anti-abortion people all under one fucking party. And I don't think that they should be under one party.
Yeah.
I think that they're vastly different.
Yeah, same thing with the left.
Same fucking thing with the left, bro. Yeah, because that's what I'm saying. For a country that's this big, a parliamentary system that represents maybe
absolutely
4 or 5 different just political party values, where again, some people are progressive, right? Some people are very fucking staunchly conservative, like that's totally fine. Other countries have that. Other Western first world countries have that. All other, right?
Yeah.
Other places where it's democratically 1v1, it's almost always a dictator, bro.
Yeah.
Always. And they'll fucking hide behind the fact that, like, oh, well, we had elections and they were free elections. And we read in this book that they're not always what we consider free, or what should be considered free and fair elections.
Well, I mean, I remember hearing El Paso, Texas, which is predominantly Latino, that they were closing down poll voting places early. Some didn't show up, so it was just like, people voted, but it's not necessarily a fair system.
Yeah.
But I think when you were talking about Donald Trump, I think, because I believe there's good and bad to everything, right? I think one of the good things about Trump being president, though, is it brought to realization everyone's views. Like, you got to see that, people you're working with are fucking racist.
Right.
Yeah, people you're working with are so anti-abortion that they're willing to risk fucking foreign war or fucking discrimination. And so I think, and for the left, it made us realize that we're not exactly on the same boat either.
Right.
I disagree with a lot of politicians now, but
we didn't necessarily want to vote for Biden, but we
absolutely
couldn't possibly have let Trump win another election, right?
Yeah, and so I think it's just like it brings to scope everything that wasn't being said before. Politics was so taboo, but now that Trump was so taboo, we can talk about it. You can go to work nowadays and talk politics, and it's not that, like, it's still fucking rough because you do have some Trump supporters in your work, but I think you start realizing what people think, and I think that's gonna be able to have us fucking cut out the weeds in our system.
Right.
The left has weeds, the right has weeds, and you just need to fucking. And you're right. I think two-party system is not gonna work for that same exact reason.
Right.
Is that, like, my views? I don't consider them democratic, which is also why I don't file as a Democrat. Yeah. I consider myself way far left. And I mean, I even took that A values test, and I mean, it said I was a libertarian socialist, which basically is a form shorter than communism.
Right.
And I do believe in socialized medicine, socialized education, because why not, right? Why not have the same exact education and healthcare for everyone in your nation, and have everyone pitch in for it? If you have more money, then pitch in a little more, and you can have everyone in your country having the same education, the same health, the same fucking opportunity that you have. And that's going to in turn make your system better. But we're so entwined to this idea that me having all this money and giving more is going to only do me bad. They don't realize that the system goes in a fucking circle.
Right.
And we're just going to be stuck fucking on this shitty economic
class warfare, bro.
Yeah,
I mean, rich people are going to continue to fight peasants until the end of time.
Yeah.
And peasants are going to continue to try to get theirs until the end of time.
And we'll always have the numbers.
Yeah, and they'll always have the money.
Yeah.
They will always have the money.
It's going to be a fucking system that never ends.
Right. That's what I'm, like, eventually I come back down to this, like, God damn it. It seems like I'm going to live and die and everything's going to be the same.
Yeah.
You know?
Which is why, like, I've always thought about the idea that, like, maybe the stresses that I take in, like, learning about this shit is not worth it.
Right.
But it feels worth it. It could just be fucking classic, I'm a fucking selfish bastard and I want better.
Fucking chemical in your brain, right?
Yeah, man. It makes me feel better to be like, you know what, fuck this. Like, there's something wrong with this system, I'm gonna try to fix that shit.
Yeah.
And it could, like, you could be right. It could be fucking nothing. Like, it could just be this big system that will never end. It's a fucking wheel that never stops turning.
It just seems so natural order of things type of way.
Yeah, which is fucked.
Because here's the thing, bro. All right, let me put it to you this way: if you were rich, right? If you were filthy fucking rich, and you're and like, let's just say again, for the sake of the game, your only job was to maintain people poor, everyone poor.
Yeah.
You had to make sure it was a Monopoly game where you had already won, and the only way to win more was to make sure that everyone lost. Could you win that game if you already had all the money from everybody on the board?
Yeah.
Could you make them lose continuously again and again?
Absolutely.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
I think of the Prince. I mean, you just give crumbs.
Yeah.
And people are happy with crumbs. I'm happy with crumbs.
That's what I'm
$2,000 checks, bro.
Bro,
give me
we
a crumb.
live on crumbs.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so maybe I'm just thinking like, fuck, man.
Like,
It's how it is. All right, hear me out, bro. Because this one has been tripping me out since I heard of the idea, of the inception of the idea, right? Elon Musk wants to go to Mars, right?
Yeah.
They are already mentioning that you could potentially pay for your fare on the boat with some kind of program where you work off the money that you owe from the flight. Sounds so fucking exactly similar to indentured servitude.
And the
So-
colonizing Mars is
So much like it, bro, that like going to Mars, I'm starting to think that humans do live on Mars and we're just being told they don't. Just like when they came over to the fucking Americas, bro, and they're like, yeah, we didn't find any people over there. We just found nothing but uncharted land for all the eye can see. And then those people showed up and they were like, oh, there are people here. And then they were like, yeah, we didn't tell you, but you guys need to kill all those people here if you want the land. You know, like, it's just so fucking vaguely familiar to, oh, yeah, we're gonna take a bunch of people to this other colony area and we're gonna have them work for indentured
And that's
servitude.
the problem with
But
somebody
Elon
having that
Musk
much
is
money,
now
bro.
literally a king, bro. He's the
Yeah.
richest person on planet Earth.
He just passed Jeff Bezos. That's the problem with having that much money, though, is you have so much freedom. That's what freedom is, dog. Freedom is having all the fucking money to do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah,
And-
because they don't necessarily have to be involved in space flight, and they're like, I want to be involved in space flight, and so we're going to Mars.
Have you seen his
Can't do
podcast
anything
with Joe
about it.
Rogan, bro? Where he basically was like, yeah, I wanted to build a tunnel underground under LA.
So
and
I
he
did
was
it.
like, so I did it.
Yeah.
And he was like, and Joe Rogan was like, you don't need like a permit. He's like, no, there's no permit. Like,
Like,
do you realize what fucking money I have?
right? He's like, well, what kind of permit do you fucking? What kind of permit costs $7 billion?
Yeah.
You know, because I'll go get it real quick.
And so like honestly, Elon Musk is a fucking genius. But again, having that much money, I mean, I don't know that I would be a good person if I had that much money. To get that much money, you have to step on people. I firmly believe that. I don't believe anyone in this world can have that much money without fucking somebody over, without paying them shit for a hard ass job, with no fucking benefits.
So do you think you could never be in that position then?
I don't think so. Because I feel like. In
'Cause I
order
feel
to
like I
get
could-
there, you have
I feel
to,
like I could step on people. It's just if it were to come down to a conscious thing, you can step on people who you believe are unworthy.
yeah, but it
Right.
falls back into that fucking circle, man.
Yeah.
Because then
Well, that's what I'm saying is like unworthy is different with every person.
yeah, no, absolutely.
There's plenty of people that have felt like, you know, people like us are unworthy,
Yeah,
and vice versa.
which is like Noam Chomsky talks about how like, and it's
But
funny
that's
how he
what
talks about it
tribalism is,
switches
you know?
too.
Yeah.
Like the United States would consider this one group of people worthy, and then all of a sudden the leadership changes, and then all of a sudden those same exact people are now unworthy.
Right. Well, if it's convenient.
Exactly,
You know?
and I think that's exactly how it is here.
Right.
Us, like if we happen to get the power, like Latinos are a growing number of people in the United States. If we happen to be the majority, I guarantee you that they're gonna start fucking. It's gonna be a fucking system where all of a sudden they're a little more worthy, because you have
Right.
so much fucking people, and you're such a big part of this nation that you can turn shit around.
Well, you can do things.
Yeah,
at
and,
that time
and
if you're
again, which is why I
organized,
also think like where the black, brown, and Asian connection is so scary to
undervalued.
governments.
It's undervalued.
Yeah, and it's
basically.
scary to governments. if that like again the Black Panthers, the Brown Berets, and I forgot the name of the Asian group, but there was also a Native American Indian organization, and all of them teamed up, and then it got dispersed right a fucking way.
Yeah.
And
Well, it sounds like communism.
Yeah.
Like in the 70s or 80s, like it was so easy to crack communism that like all like oh yeah, a couple of different races together, communism.
Yeah.
That was pretty.
Because
That sounds like the easiest.
If you want a fair system,
Yeah.
communism.
It sounds like the easiest warrant they ever got. Judge, look, they want us to care about them.
And I think manufacturing consent talks about how the media is one of the largest proponents of the propaganda model, and I think.
But they mentioned that if it wasn't for social, or if it wasn't for the media, certain aspects of the war wouldn't be viable.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't convince the public to go to war if they hadn't been reading about something bad that had been happening in a country, or maybe something sadistic that had been happening, because we'll just highlight things that we want people to read or hear about, and if they hear about that same thing 100 times, then it's going to sound like a more important issue than something that they haven't heard about.
Do you remember the section in the book where he's talking about they're showing the literal fucking Vietnam War on television? Like, that shit, I didn't vet it, but when I read that part, it tripped me out.
Yeah.
And they showed legit fucking.
Because they don't do that anymore, bro.
No.
Like, I don't think I've ever seen a video of like Iraq where it's like genuine combat.
Yeah.
Because I've seen videos where they're just videotaping some random shit and then there's gunfire in the background.
Yeah.
Or I've seen shit where it's like the dudes that are at like the military bases in Afghanistan.
Because that shit's brutal, man.
Right. They don't want you to see people getting their shit blown off, bro, because you know how quickly we would say, oh, shit, oh, my God, why are we even over there? You know, like, it's so quick to just be like, wow, we shouldn't be at war.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that was one of the reasons that the United States gave for having lost that war.
Yeah.
They said, we started showing freaking civilians the war and they couldn't handle it, and that's why we lost.
What the fuck did you think? I'm an optimistic person, and sometimes it bites me in the ass, but I genuinely believe that everyone's good. And so I think that most people, when they think of war, they think no. I think where it becomes an issue is where it becomes profitable. Because if you're thinking profits, you're like, okay, war is bad, but I'm making money. And that's where the military-industrial complex comes in. Like, I don't think that people are genuinely bad. I think it's just you're a businessman. And that's where capitalism fucking irks me, because it's a flawed system, and it creates these people who put profits over people. Right. And that's exactly what it is.
Well, and here's the thing is, I think ultimately just about anybody would put profits over people.
Exactly. And that's why I think that, like,
because we're self-interested. We read that in The Prince too, right?
100%.
So we're more likely to say profits for me instead of life for you.
Yeah.
Especially if we don't see it.
Yeah. That's the thing.
Especially if we don't, because out of sight, out of mind. So if you don't see the war that's going on in somebody else's backyard, then it doesn't worry you. It only worries you because it's in the backyard. You're like, damn.
That's where media could be so useful. Like, media could be the fucking best thing in the world, but the way it's used is the opposite of what it's supposed to be. I think the same thing on social media, bro. I deleted all my social media because it was so negative, and people just fucking have this whole ball of hate on it. But in reality, social media could be fucking the opposite, where it's completely positive. You're connecting with people across the world, combining ideas, and coming up with a whole better system for the entire world.
Right.
We could come up with, like we were saying, it's crowdsourcing.
Well, yeah.
Somebody in a different country could have this idea of like a perfect government, right? And we would never know about it, but social media brings that to light.
So you know what I like to see it as? Social media is like, think of like these. You ever played that game, bro, where you drop like a quarter in at the top and it hits a bunch of like little sticks and it eventually ends up somewhere on the board, but it's actually pretty random. It's not necessarily like super random, but pretty damn random, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think social media is like that, except it has funnels that are certain sizes.
Yeah.
And so like hate and negativity and bullshit, those funnels are so big, man. They're so wide.
Yeah.
They encapsulate so much shit that we do want to see some for some reason,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Well, we like drama.
right, we do like fire, you know,
Yeah.
we like destruction. We like the idea, oh, look, there's a fire over there, let's go check it out, you know?
Or there's fight, like.
Or there's a fight
Yeah.
that just broke out, let's go see who fucking wins,
Yeah.
you know? And so
Animalistic. We're animalistic at the core.
right. And so you see those things, I think, on social media, and they pull you in. That funnel is huge. And those things that you're mentioning, right, where the crowdsourcing is so goddamn useful, those things are actually really small. You need to be specifically looking for those things sometimes in order to be dropped off on those, you know, I don't know what you want to call them, but you'll get dropped off on a little, like, rabbit hole, you know?
Yeah.
But sometimes, you know, you didn't quite expect to go, you know, down that shit, right? Because the funnel was so big, you know, you'd be like, fuck, man, I didn't want to be hearing about all the fucking times that somebody died and
that's
you
the
know,
thing about algorithms
in the
too, is
COVID,
that
right?
it just feeds
Exactly.
to it.
Yeah, and so that's the thing is sometimes, it's not to say, bro, that humans, right, we only want to see what we saw yesterday. Usually we want to see something similar to what we saw yesterday with a little bit of variation, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's really cool to see something completely out of the blue that you've never seen before. Algorithms don't take that into you just can't, bro. AI is really difficult to like fixate on human beings or make it perfect for human beings.
Well, it's because we're so indecisive too that our brain functions is very bizarre
And
erratic.
we're humans, bro. Again, like we're technically built to be like walking up big ass fucking mountains, you know, and feel all accomplished because we got to the top, you know, like and see new shit that technically we saw on the way there, but at the same time, here's this big ass view of all of it encapsulated, you know. That's why the internet is so cool because you can just fucking take all of this shit and just kind of like round it all together. Here's music from fucking Asia. Here's, you know, like food from India. Here's podcasts from the US. Here's, you know, architecture from Europe, you know? And you can just like look at all of it in one place, bro. It's like going to a museum on all of our phones, you know? But at the same time, you're right. These algorithms have got us in some kind of like way where like, you know, you looked up a song, bro, and now you're only listening to songs like that song. And you liked a couple of those songs, so now you're only listening to songs that sound like that song, that sound like those songs, that sound like all those songs.
In addition to algorithms, there's also the people.
And you can like other music, I guess is what I'm saying. You know, like some of those funnels are just so small, and you like some of that shit, bro. It's just, it's an issue almost to try it the first time, you know?
I think in addition to the algorithms, is the corporations and the people who head these media social media platforms. So like you were talking about Trump's Twitter gang canceled,
right?
So that is a form of control of what we see. And so I agree that he caused these insurrectionists 100%, but I also think taking him off is a big fucking step because it's going to be used against anyone. If I post,
it's a slippery slope,
if
bro.
I post something about
I agree
about how we need to fight and fight for the poor people, they'll be like, this guy's a fucking
right. It's gonna be taken out of context
immediately. And you're taking off that one factor of, like you said, the museum of the internet. You're taking off a section and putting it in a dark room and being like, well, you can't see that fucking part.
Yeah.
And so I think these
slippery
corporations
slope,
have
bro.
control of what we see.
I agree completely, bro. It is such a dangerous thing to say. That opinion is dangerous.
Yeah.
And we can't listen to it.
Yeah.
But again, it's not that I like disagree. I do think Trump is a dangerous opinion.
Absolutely.
And I do think that the FBI coordinator said this a year ago. He said white supremacists or white nationalist groups are the most threatening thing to American national security. White nationalists. And it's like,
which makes sense. I mean,
it's dangerous, but to delete somebody completely off the face of the earth, you're 100% right. It's a fucking slippery slope that we've all seen how it goes downhill,
and it always affects the other side.
Right. It's so easy to start with, we banned it because of the right-wing politics, and then just fucking attack the shit out of it. Because I'm telling you, bro, it's not that, like, I'm so, like, oh, fuck the right wing, the left wing is perfect. It's just more so, look, in what I've noticed, and even in this book, right, he mentioned that, look, usually the right wing is super, like, conservative with support of elite.
Yeah.
money, you know, and he's like, and usually left-leaning groups are supported by numbers and poverty, you know, the fact that people are so poor and it makes sense for them to own something.
This book was written in the 80s, though. I feel like it's gotten a lot more corporatist since then.
You think so?
I think so. I think the left is a lot more corporatist.
No, I agree. Yeah.
When I think of like the poor people, I don't think of them as corporatists. When I think of the people who've taken over the Democratic Party.
Right. Well, again, it goes back down to the like, how do these organizations run? Yeah. Well, they start pure in the heart, and then people who are not pure in the heart take over and start to run it. Yeah. You know, the feminist movement did that exactly. The feminist movement was about poor colored women.
Yeah.
And then white women were suddenly like, oh yeah, I've been oppressed too, for sure. And I'm not saying that their existence has been easy and perfect.
No, yeah.
Because of white women.
Sexism
it's
to
just
white women as well, but
it's not the same experience.
Yeah.
And so for them to be like touting feminism, it's like, it's not quite what you're like. That's not it. You're missing the point.
Well, it reminds me of All Lives Matter, where it's just like right. Yeah, okay, all lives matter, but the point is right now that black lives are at a disposal rate.
Yeah.
And so we need to fight for that.
Right.
And All Lives Matter was kind of like oh yeah, well, we matter too. Like, you're saying that we don't matter, and it's like, no, you don't fucking get it. It's a fucking phenomenon in our country where fucking black people are at higher risk of death by murder of government organizations than for white people.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a problem, and it's not.
We all think it's a problem. That was the thing, is so many people think this is a problem, and some people think it's a problem that they weren't included in the. Well, my life matters too.
You fucking idiot.
That wasn't. Right, you're missing the fucking point.
And the thing too is, it's not just cops killing black people. It's the healthcare system's killing black people. It's the fucking it's the entire system, and it's black and brown, but black people at an extraordinary rate. Yeah. And same thing with the Native American communities. I mean, the amount of
women giving birth, bro. I mean, yeah. I mean, women giving birth. It was more likely for you to be killed by a white doctor if you were a person of color.
Yeah.
How? Or not killed by, but like die in the procedure of your birth.
Mm-hmm. And then there's people out there who think that it's just complaining and that the system's perfect and we're just fucking. And
it's not perfect. I think I think like what we can just like, one of the things that we can all usually agree upon, right? And because we need to be able to coexist and communicate with people from the other side of the radical fence anyways, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because radical leftists, if you could potentially talk to radical right-wingers, right? If you could actually talk to them, then maybe you could at least have some kind of opportunity to understand some way, shape, or form where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Because if you're a radical on any side, you should definitely understand the radical on the other side.
I think open communication would make our society so much better. I think if we just detached from our views and you don't have to agree with someone when you talk to them. You can just listen to them and be like, okay, well, I at least we can have a conversation and fucking understand each other.
Right.
And you don't have to fucking agree. That's the biggest fucking point. You don't have to, but you don't necessarily have to make it aggressive either.
Which again is one of the big reasons I like the idea of like full representation, you know, where all the conservatives in California
I agree 100%.
Also do get to put their vote towards a representative that they really do feel represents them wholly, you know?
Yeah.
And the reason I say so is because after that, you know, like they're like, oh, well, I'm for this party, right? And if we really do believe it's like the supremacist party, we can be like, okay, why, bro? Like, because I would never vote for them, but how come you find it like an extraordinary reason, I guess, to vote for that party? And you could get down to it, whatever it is that it is, you know? And if you can really tell, like, oh, yeah, bro, it's just a supremacist thing.
Yeah.
You could really, like, you can usually tell in a conversation. It's not that, like, you need to fucking listen to them, like, be like, oh, well, it's because of this and it's because of this. But right now with the Republican Party, that does happen. That does happen a lot. Again, 50% of the United States population voted for not Donald Trump. They voted for a conservative presidency. Like the other half of the United States didn't vote for Biden, bro.
Yeah.
We voted for a liberal presidency.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, that's really all it comes down to, right? And here's the funny thing, too, is like, again, coming back to the Democratic National Convention with Bernie, you know, like, there was a huge portion of the population that wanted to vote for progressivism with Bernie, and another part of the population that wanted to vote for conservative liberalism with Hillary.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But if we could have represented our, voices that way, then maybe people wouldn't have gotten discouraged and not voted like they did because of the Bernie
And the system
situation.
was rigged. I mean,
Well, that's what I'm saying, bro. Is eventually, right? Like, it's better if it all is just sorted out, even if the worst of the worst, in your opinion, people get their vote as well. Because then at that point, you can't be mad, bro. You're being represented, and so is everybody else.
yeah.
And
that's
every
all, that's
vote,
all,
bro,
that's all
again,
we want, honestly. Like,
I think that's all we
if you
want,
look at
bro.
these Midwestern states and like where there's fucking farms and the auto industries, a lot of, like, again, I believe most that everyone's a good person, and most of these people just want their voices heard, and a lot of them they don't want their jobs taken. They want security, and it's fucking fine to want that, but
Right.
it's just you attach yourself to this idea where it's like Mexicans are taking your jobs or some, and it's attached to this fucking escape route. And because they're not represented, it's just this idea that the elites are fucking taking everything, which is true to an extent.
Right.
But because of that, they're voting for
The wrong
fucking thing.
Right.
And it's not their fault. It's the system's fault.
Well, and here's the funny thing too, bro, is like sometimes, or within this last election, right, there were plenty of things that I found myself looking at the ballot, right, and they were like, oh yeah,
choose we talked about this,
right,
yeah.
where we didn't even know what the fuck we were actually even voting for. And again, we talked about that in 1984. They mentioned doublespeak, where they just say shit like, you can't not go over there, and you're like, all right, well, am I allowed to go there, or am I not supposed to go over?
And it's so relevant today. I mean, Trump saying, "Don't hurt the police,ce, but
storm the Capitol."
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That's like
it's Orwellian doublespeak.
Right,
It's exactly what it is.
And so I think if we could find a way, because again, like, even voting for some of the things where they're like, oh, we're gonna vote for taxes to be increased on these things, right? And it's like, me and my little brother basically discussed, we were like, that's true, right? They're gonna tax this corporation for being the landowner of this thing.
Yeah.
But you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna tax or they're just gonna up the prices of the person who rents out the space. You know what that person's gonna do? They're just gonna up the prices on everything that they sell in the store. So when you go into the store, you see inflated prices, and that's not necessarily what you wanted. You wanted the larger landowner to get taxed, and he's just passing on those taxes to you. Like,
which is why I think regulation is important, because regulation helps deter things like that.
Yeah.
That's why regulation needs to be a bigger part of our fucking government, because these large corporations do exactly that. They fucking skimp out and give the people shit and keep the profits. Either way, they're profiting. It doesn't matter to them.
Yeah,
you can fucking increase taxes. Okay, like you said, they're just gonna pass it down, and it's just gonna keep being. They're gonna keep the same amount in their pocket, and
like,
the people are just gonna suffer.
They usually don't look at it as a deterrent. It's not like, oh, we're gonna get taxed $5. It's like, all right, great, we're gonna get taxed $5, so we're gonna raise the prices $7, so that we make an extra $2 on the fact that we had to raise prices. Yeah,
what
like,
were you
it's
talking
not
about earlier about the insurance companies.
Oh yeah, well, how you just fucking. Well, it's not even specifically that. I mean, just in Fight Club they mention it, where it's like an easier way to understand, right? Where it's like, all right, well, there's this recall that needs to be done, right? But if it costs less money to fight the legal battles, then do the recall, then we won't do the recall. We'll just fight the legal battles, and we'll let the people die that could potentially be saved if we were to do the recall. But the money matters add up to. We really don't need to do this recall.
How much money they would lose in lawsuit battles, and either way, they're thinking of every outcome for them to profit, and that's honestly one of my biggest issues with capitalism. It's just profit, fucking focused,
right?
And people pay for it.
Because here's the thing too about the market, right, and about the value of the market being set by people who are willing to spend their money.
Yeah.
Right? That makes sense. Like, if you and I, it makes sense for certain things, right? Because if you and I want to go buy food, right? Even if it's just, let's say, like an In-N-Out burger, right? Because you can't charge $30 for a burger unless you're providing some kind of ambiance thing or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, you can't charge $30 for a burger if they're just gonna walk into your restaurant, get the burger, walk out. Especially right now, right?
Yeah.
So you can't really charge $30 for that, right? But you can charge maybe even $10. There are some places that charge $10 for a burger, right?
Yeah.
Why? Maybe it's a little bigger than that other $4 burger that you get or whatever, right? And so all those prices can be set by, like, I'm going to go in there and get that burger because it's worth it. Or, you know what? I'm not going to go in there and get that burger because it's not, right? But let's take other things, for example. Things that are, like, maybe way bigger on scale. Things that maybe even if you could do it, only the rich would buy, right? Because luxuries, perfectly all right. I don't care that I can't buy a Rolls Royce and only certain people can buy Rolls Royces.
Yeah.
That's not really my concern, right? But if only rich people could buy homes that were above a certain value, would that maybe deter you from, like, buying a home if your home was suddenly, if it was going to be worth, like, I don't know. Like, do you ever want to buy a home?
Absolutely.
Would you buy a home if it was over $1 million?
No.
Why not?
Can't afford it.
Okay. What if that's the direction that we're heading in the United States? And the other route is to set up, like, a small home. Let's say, again, just for, like, fucking shits and giggles, let's say the government's made it illegal to build new homes. Right?
Yeah.
The value of homes would go up really fucking high.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny is right now, with all this inflation happening, the value of, like, not just homes is going up, but everything is going up, right? The stocks are going up like crazy, right? Material is going up like crazy. And so here's the funny thing. It's costing more now to build a home as well. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Than it is to even just buy a home that's already existing. Now, here's a problem with that. You'll stop creating more homes because it's just cheaper to buy one that's already built. And if it's just cheaper to buy one that's already built, why build a new home? And the reason that I'm bringing this up at all is because eventually, how much is it going to cost to get a home?
It's going to get I mean, think of California compared to other states where
and,
we're just...
And so here's another thing, too. Because of this stimulus thing and everyone's working from home now, imagine what the prices are going to be like in places that before it cost $100,000 for a home.
Yeah.
Because now you can move there and you can live off of, you know, your internet job, and it's fine.
Yeah.
All these places that are worth, you know, like, oh, it's worth $500,000 to live there, it probably won't drop too much in value. But these other places are going to start to rise.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, there are going to be not too many poor areas in the United States. But where are all the poor people going to go?
They just get pushed.
They're just going to get pushed to other areas,
Well,
right?
I think
but if it's too expensive to build more homes, are they going to build more homes for poor people? Maybe. They'll just build really small shacks kind of things.
Yeah, like the fucking favelas.
Favelas, right? And so you start getting into the, are we moving in the right direction or are we moving in the wrong direction?
Yeah. Which is why I remember
because
taking
we're all
this
being
class.
thrown this bone, right? Of the $2,000 bone, $1,200 bone. But are we going to pay for it?
Possibly.
I've never seen something that, you know, like, is not sweet in the long term that you don't have to pay for in the long term.
Patrice O'Neill says nothing's for free. Nothing's for free. And I think that's a good point. But I also... It's kind of like a double-edged sword because there are people out there that really need those checks.
Right.
I personally do not right now.
No, I agree.
Understand that, but there are people who really need it, and it's difficult because it's a common thing in politics too, where they pair something to where it's like, if you don't vote for this, then you're fucking the people over.
Right.
And so I think it's one of those things where it's just like, everyone wants the $2,000 checks, yes, but you are right that, like, it's possible that something could be attached to it.
Everything needs to be more transparent.
And these documents are long, bro. Nobody's gonna read that shit. And are they even available in full text to the public? I mean, even if they are, who's gonna sit there and read the entire fucking thing and be like, "Oh, look at this"? Like, I don't read that shit. Like,
I was gonna say the bill. There needs to be something more transparent about the way that our bill system works.
Yeah.
Because we're just allowing corruption to happen beneath our fucking noses, bro.
Yeah, and then like I said, like they'll give you the main points of the bill, and be like, this is what you're voting for. But
But then
in
if
all
you
reality,
watch
there's
it,
other
bro,
shit.
it's a book
Yeah.
that's a bill. A book is a bill. It's this tall,
Yeah.
which means everyone typed up 2 pages and slipped it in there.
Yeah.
And eventually, you know, when like you don't have time anymore to deny a bill and you just have to pass it because people are dying,
Yeah.
and you need to get them their $2,000 so that they can make rent and buy food and, you know, like feed their children. Suddenly you can just write in whatever the fuck you want to that bill and it's not gonna get denied because what are you gonna deny people their $2,000?
Exactly.
Like it becomes one of those situations, and so I get it. It's fucking bullshit.
And politics is like that too. Like
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell, when he denied the checks and then he made his own bill and put like all this other shit that like helps his ideals, and it was just kind of like, it was funny to see that because it was kind of like that could have easily got passed.
Yeah.
And people would have been like, fuck yeah, we got $2,000 checks. But like Mitch McConnell was like smart because he fucking was trying to get his fucking shit in it.
Yeah.
It didn't pass, thankfully, but like it's that simple.
That's
It's
what
that
I'm
simple
saying.
because
Yeah.
that's what
A
people,
bill-
when you see that bill and you see $2,000 checks, you're gonna vote for it for the most part. You don't think about the other shit.
Right.
And it's just and the media fucking sells the same exactly, which is why this book I thought was perfect for this time period, bro, because it's exactly what's going on.
Yeah, it highlights
exactly
how the
what's
media.
going on.
It highlights how the media be on its bullshit,
Yeah.
basically.
And I love that how he talks about like critical journalism is what's needed. You need those people who fucking go against the grain every fucking time.
Yeah.
And I think journalism has been kind of straying away from that just because of situations like a lot of journalists do get killed.
Yeah, it's not uncommon.
Good journalists get killed. And it's kind of like one of those things where you just it's like a martyr system, bro. Like, these people are finding shit out and have to run for their lives. I mean, think even for the people who fucking are whistleblowers. Think of Assange and fucking Edward Snowden. They released information about our government that fucking just like tarnished the reputation, and these people are running for their lives.
Usually, if you decide to be a leader for the left, you'll become a martyr. Like, you'll get killed eventually.
Yeah.
I think
Like the actual left, not what the Democratic
Right.
Party is now.
because I'll think of like Malcolm X and
Yeah.
Martin Luther King
Yeah.
and JFK.
absolutely.
Like, I think of all those people as like as more true representations of what I understand to be the left.
Yeah.
And I'll just notice, you know, that eventually it's not convenient for a couple of really rich people, and then boom, 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 you know, like moves will just be made, and then those people will be dead, and then that'll be the end of, because really, like, yeah, you need a leader in order to like organize things.
Yeah.
And so leaders are actually not a super common thing, I would say.
Like actual leaders, right?
Right, like,
Yeah.
well, like an actual true leader too that like that has maybe multiple qualities that you need. Like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X had a great speaker.
You have
in
to have
them,
charisma.
you know? Right.
You have to be likable.
Yeah, and it right. And so so again, I think there's like a level of like of naturalness to their like to their lead, you know? And I've just noticed that that's really inconvenient, again, for not just the right wing, but usually to the right wing elitists. And it's just too cheap to kill someone for them to not make that move. That's why I'm saying, like, if you were in that if you were that rich, man, and all you needed to do was just maintain everybody poor, could you do it?
Yeah.
The reason I ask is because it's just automatic if you're at that level, you know? It's like, I remember 50 Cent one time mentioned, he was like, how much do you think it costs to get somebody killed in the United States?
Oh, I think I heard this.
And he was like, maybe like 5 to 10 racks, you know, like if you're really fucking paying money, right? But he was like, 5 to 10 racks, bro. He's like, that's nothing for me.
Yeah.
And he's right, you know. I think the interview that he had it, you know, when he was like pretty much at the top of his game, you know, so he was making money hand over fist, and it wasn't, what, $5,000 was going to be something that inconvenienced him.
Yeah.
How much do you think it cost Elon Musk to kill somebody, you know, like, and to keep it clean, like, off his fucking hands, off of his record, you know, like, and does he have the money? Yeah. You know how much he would need to sell? He would need to sell, you know, what, 5 Tesla shares out of his 23% stake in the company. Like, dude, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's how much he would have to sell just to get somebody killed, you know? Like, if somebody was threatening his right-wing, you know, like, agenda of, you know, like, being very profitable and getting all these companies to go the way that he wants them to go. And I'm not saying that he's a right-wing person. It's just convenient for him, for any government to say, yeah, hey man, do whatever you want. You know, like, it's helping all of us.
Going back to the leader thing, do you think Bernie didn't get elected because he's not charismatic and...
No, I think Bernie didn't get elected because Democratic elites or liberal elites wanted Hillary.
Do you find him
than
as like charismatic enough to be that type of leader, like a Malcolm X, Martin Luther King? Because I've questioned this.
No, because they were...
Because his ideology...
They were speakers, bro. Like, I think Obama did.
Exactly, but his ideas were just a little too...
Right. But that's what I'm saying is, I think that, like... I think most of the charisma comes with, like, voice. Like, do you have that voice that you can talk to 20 people at the same time and get them all to listen intently? Because Obama could do that for hundreds of thousands of people.
And he was lovable.
Right. And so was Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. They were both... You could listen to them speak in the midst of 40,000 people and truly feel like he was speaking into your soul, and you could be like, damn, bro, like, I do believe what he's saying. You know, like, what he's saying resonates, and it all makes sense. And I've experienced it, and I've thought of those reactions. You know, maybe I just have or have not, you know, like, reacted to them. I think they had that level of, you know, like, because it's a connection. They create a connection with everybody that they're talking to, you know? And that's how they find a way to, you know, like, cut through to you, you know, and be like, all right, you, how do you feel about the way people are treated about this or about this, you know?
Because I think if Bernie had that type of energy, I think regardless of a corrupted DNC and Hillary Clinton, I think if he was that charismatic, he would have been elected. And honestly, he probably would have been murdered. Because his ideas are too fucking gone for elitists. He's progressive. He plays out and says it. He's going for the rich people, for the billionaires. He said he openly is against billionaires. He's along the same note as I said earlier, where that in order to get that rich, you have to step on people.
Right.
And he's like fuck that.
It's a progressive.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, absolutely.
I don't think he would have. So this is another funny fucking thing that my friend's dad told me. He said that if Bernie had won the primary election for the Democratic National Convention, that the Republican Party would have immediately slapped on the communist title.
Oh, dude, they were doing it already.
Yeah, I don't remember ever like having heard him as a commie, but I know that like on social media they were already doing it. I mean, it's just the classic rhetoric. He mentions it. He's like, dude, we've been doing the same thing since the 80s. It hasn't changed, and we've probably been doing the same things since way before then. Yeah. And so it's not like, again, I think in a certain sense, bro, I think it's a natural reaction almost.
For people in power? Yeah,
you become in power and you start to, you know, like, believe certain things almost, you know? Almost like you get, you like, I don't know, man, let's say you competed with 2,000 people, you know, and you end up at number 1. You're not going to believe even a little bit that you're a little bit better than some of those people, if not most of them, if not all of them.
I'm like torn because I feel like in one aspect, it's been going on for so long that it almost seems like it's impossible for any other result. But I also think because it's been going on so long, we've been like, that's all we've seen, that's all we know. But maybe there's something outside the box that is so out of juice that we have no fucking clue. Is it pulling up? Gotta get fucked up, guys. Yeah, but yeah, I think. I forgot what I was saying.
How you feel?
They don't like seeing Mexicans talk in the middle of a forest. Huh?
Right.
It's all good. Is it looking up here?
I have no idea.
Sorry, that technical difficulties.
Right.
That's weird, bro. He's just driving slow by. And it's a big old white dude in a truck.
Oh.
Yeah, man. So, anyways, this book is fucking. I don't know, man. I've been interested in Noam Chomsky for a while.
Yeah.
I actually heard. Funny enough, I heard about him on accident through. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie called Captain Fantastic.
No.
It's basically a movie about people who live out in the fucking woods, pretty much, and he makes them read fucking books and shit. And they have Noam Chomsky Day, and I remember looking it up and just not really caring because I also like wasn't that into politics yet.
Right.
And then when I started getting into politics and I watched a lot of Kyle Kalinske and in Secular Talk, and he talks about Noam Chomsky, and I started like researching and then also seeing videos of him and man, just the ideal. So, and this book gets referenced a lot. I mean, he talks about how it was in what was that fucking movie, Good Will Hunting, with Robin Williams.
Right.
And he mentions it, and it's just like it's been talked about, and I think it's gonna continue to be talked about, especially as it becomes more relevant to our times in politics.
Right. It's a bitchin' fucking book.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not that it was like fun to read like you would read a fucking a Dragon Tale kind of book, but it's the kind of shit that you really it really opens your eyes to like the United States and the willingness to how would you say, the willingness to play any and all games in order to win, because the 60s and 70s and 80s was categorized by we're the world power now, like we, Germany's not the number one, we're the number one, right? Or Europe's not the number one, we're the number one.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the Soviet Union was our competitor, and they were the only person that could potentially be, as big as the United States then, and so it seemed like it was just one big competition against, Soviet.
Well, I think
ideals.
It's great that we talked about the Prince first and then this, because it becomes so relevant. Where it's just power complexes and fucking the power of these 9 conglomerate media sources that fucking own everything,
right.
And their ability to keep their power over everyone. Because the way it works is these 9 organizations have so much money, right? And then you pay for lobbyists who form PACs, and PACs influence politics.
Yeah.
That's how it's gonna work. And he talks about that. He's like, if you're getting paid from someone, you don't want to lose their money.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna talk shit about this product, corporation, anything.
Yeah, bro.
And that's exactly
on my mama, right?
On some real shit. Yeah. And that's just what it is. And so
it's a dirty aspect of our government and our politics and our economy.
And that's why I think money should be out of politics, but
right.
I don't think it ever will leave. These lobbyists are going to continue to fight for military-industrial complex, big pharma,
right.
for fucking everything, man. There's so many big corporations that just fucking...
And they will keep paying people to run. Like they'll keep paying front runners of political parties an extra $200,000, an extra $500,000 to, hey, once you get into office, like just don't oust us,
And that's the problem, because I mean, like when you have someone like Bernie fighting for Medicare for all, the big pharma sees that, and then you
right.
fucking go to your politicians that you do have in your pocket,
and you say, hey, we need Hillary Clinton to win this this primary election.
Or else we're just not going to fund you.
Right, exactly. And so
and that's there's this new movement against, like, with the progressive leadership, where they're only taking small dollar donations, which is, I think it's smart, because if you're powered by the people, you only have to work for the people. And 9 out of 10 times, I think it's better for a system. Good?
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's the one.
Awesome.
That concludes episode 3.
Third Eye Vortex.
Third Eye Vortex.
Manufacturing concern.
Thank you, Noam Chomsky.